Welcome to Tea and Stuff. I am here with Nazanin of Tea Thoughts, the Tea Thoughts. I was super excited. I know when I started talking about podcasts and people were putting in suggestions for guests, like you were every couple suggestions. People were like, you need to have Naz on. You need to have Naz on. And I was like, I'll get to it.
Really?
Yeah. So obviously, hello, welcome. What are you drinking or going to be drinking?
It is from the Tea Practitioner, and it's a oolong tea. It's named Yellow Rose Cliff, so it's kind of like it's a very like roasty oolong, which is what I'm reaching for always, but especially in the fall season when it's like a little bit chillier.
Yep, this is my prime Dantong and Dong Ding drinking season. So obviously, for those who don't know, you own Tea Thoughts, which is an online tea business, and you specialize in apparel and stationery and tea and tea wear. And it's from somebody who, knows a thing about sourcing tea stuff. It is mind-boggling to me to look at how much stuff that you get and include in your boxes, and just like it must be unbelievable amount of work to put those together.
I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot of work. It's mostly the difficult thing is some of the stuff I get, like when I had you featured in the box, that was easy because you're in the US, and so you just give me your lead time and you ship it. Shipping is easy. But like when I source teaware, a lot of times it comes from China because that's like the source. And so it's kind of unpredictable of like the deadline that I set for when I release the box, and then how long I have to ship them out, and then how long the countdown starts, And so that's one of the most difficult aspects of it, is just timing everything. And especially like if I only sent it to people in the US, it would be a little bit easier. But I do have several lovely Canadian customers, and I want them to be able to participate too. So I have to like keep that in mind. But it's also like I want it to always be fresh, and that's hard because I don't know like what people have tried. I mean, I try my best to like research tea companies. Like I follow a lot of my customers on Instagram, and I see what they're drinking, what they already know about. So that's as I do it more, I'm like, all right, well, I don't want to do too many from this place or too many from this place because maybe they've already tried it. But it's actually a lot of fun. It's like one of my I really love like the curation aspect. It is just like I have to be organized about it.
Yeah, well, I can tell that. I'm sure other people can too, that like it's not only like you've taken a bunch of cool things and then put them together. Like I feel like you put a good amount of thought into like a theme of each. Or do you sort of create that theme as you go, or do you go into the box tailoring it to be a certain way?
Well, so I do try to make it themed. The difficult thing for me for making things themed is like, if I'm doing a spring box, right? What do you think of when you think of spring? Maybe you think of like fresher green teas or something like that, right? But I kind of just do it like, if I find something interesting, I'm going to put it in the box, even if it's, not the right season or whatever. I also drink like whatever tea I want, whenever I want. So I'm not, I obviously, I talked about this with Vince of Fresh Steeps. Obviously there are teas that like, if it's a greener tea and it tastes better closer to when it's produced and picked, then yes, drink it then. But most of the teas I drink are good for aging, and like they taste better sometimes down the road. So I try to make it themed, but I also like it might be more themed based on like the design versus what's actually like the teas in it, because it might be like I can only get these teas from certain companies, and so that's what I'm going to do. And then I try to make, like, if it's spring, maybe more floral, or the one I did for winter had like a penguin that I designed with a gaiwan. So the design is definitely theme specific, and I think I'm going to do next year, it's going to be mostly just the seasons, because that gives me time between. So like spring, summer, fall, and then the like Advent winter one. I used to do Valentine's Day, which I love because I think it's fun to like treat yourself, but also it's like way too close to the holidays and like January. And so I might do a smaller one for that, but I started doing it because I like wrapping presents. And that's kind of a big part of it, is like wrapping every single day. And I do like the curation thing because I get to research, and I found so many new tea companies. I mean, I knew about you before, but I think I introduced you to a lot of new people.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And yeah, and that's one of the goals. So like it's the selfish part is I like the curation aspect, but then the part where I'm like, I'm really small, so I can't do like a huge thing, but something small I can do is like if I buy tea from a small shop, or just a shop that maybe wants to get their tea out there more, then I'm supporting them by purchasing it. And then hopefully some of my customers will also discover them and purchase from them. So that's the twofold thing. So you're supporting my small business and other small businesses.
Yeah, I really like how you do it. There's a bunch of kind of subscription or box release, subscription based releases, and they're all cool in their own way. But yours definitely, and like you mentioned, it's not just what's in it, but that you carefully wrap everything. Like it's there's so much intention that you put into the, not only just the packaging, but the contents in it. Do you have a background in graphic design, or are you a painter? How did you end up, doing a tea clothing and design based company?
I don't have any formal training. I'm self-taught, but I've always been encouraged, because my mom's an artist. And so from when I was a little kid, she would get me those, art kits. Like one of my first ones was like a paperclip jewelry kit. And so I've always been encouraged to do creative things. My education isn't in art. I actually have a business degree in sport management, actually. So not in business, but I have always enjoyed like making gifts, making cards and things like that. And so the job that I have now, that I actually am leaving at the end of this month, when I started it, I thought that I would be able to get some like creative stuff in there because I was like the marketing type person. But because we're a small nonprofit, it's really more about like, what can everyone do? And so I felt very like creatively stifled. And so I thought, why don't I start a blog? And then I was like, I've always wanted to start an Etsy. So when I started the Etsy, I was like painting, I did calligraphy,
Wow.
and I like handmade cards and stuff. And then I was like, if I want to do this on a larger scale, I need to learn graphic design. So I just started watching YouTube videos and kind of taught myself Illustrator. And I've definitely gotten, like, obviously I'm not professionally trained, but I've definitely gotten much better over the years. So that's kind of how I came to it. And I'm constantly trying to improve myself. And I still sometimes look stuff up. I'm like, man, how do I do that? Or like, how do I make this effect? Or
Luckily, there's so much of that up on just YouTube that you can just say, how do I do X, Y, and Z? And it literally will have a video that just shows you step by step how to do it. You're brave. So you made it all the way to Illustrator. I'm definitely not a graphic designer either. I've just had courses in Photoshop in high school. But I know enough of Photoshop to make things, and I do all my own labels and stuff, and but no formal training. But Photoshop is one thing, but Illustrator is like a whole nother beast. I've like tiptoed in that, but I was like, nah, I think my skill level's much more Photoshop based.
Well, I do know some Photoshop, but I do a lot of vector art. So I work in Illustrator. So a lot of times I'll sketch something so that I have an idea of like what I want it to look like. And then I'll either trace it and then vectorize it, or I will like go from my drawing and just like make it from scratch in vector. So that's why I went to Illustrator, because I was like, which one would be the best? I can use Photoshop, but I don't usually use it for designs. And I mean, there's so many great programs. Like there's Canva, which you probably know about, which like if you don't have any design experience, it's easy. You just go in there, can pick templates and just change stuff. So there's a lot of good stuff, but Illustrator's definitely my jam. That's what I work in mostly.
I think the penguin you were talking about, that's the pin that you sent me that I keep. It's a magnet pin, a wooden one of the penguin holding the guy on, and I keep that. I attach that to my tin of my favorite tea at the time.
Yes, you showed me that. That's such a good way to use it. I should change the product description and say you can use this to mark your favorite tea tin.
Well, when I got it, I was like, oh yeah, I was like, I gotta find something like good to stick this to. And I was looking around, and then I saw the tin, and I was like, that would just be too perfect, and just clinked right onto it. And I was like, there we go. Very nice. But beyond you putting together the boxes and putting together like all this art for sure, you also maintain a role in the tea community. Like you're also an active person, whether it is promoting just yourself or you're just hopping on to meet with friends or just to talk about tea. What's kind of how's that been for you? And are you continuing to do it? Have you been stifled? Not just because of COVID, or what? I guess what kind of, where are you trying to head with everything?
Well, I definitely would say my interaction with the tea community is mostly on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I interact, I think, a lot with my like customers, but also before I was like, I was doing my shop so much. It was like, I met a lot of tea people like you and our little steep group, and so I think before we're doing a lot of like virtual sessions, and now that I feel like I'm not doing that as much anymore. But I definitely I think the best thing is like I've made so many friends, even though I've never physically met a lot of these people. I've made a lot of friends, and just talking about tea or, I do enjoy sharing what people are doing. If Instagram shows me people's posts other than like 3 people, that like my entire feed now is like 2 people I follow. And then all these accounts I don't follow, that's like, do you want to follow this person? I'm like, what about all these people that I have purposefully followed and I don't see their stuff?
No, Instagram the tea community at the beginning of its existence on Instagram was amazing, because you were truly getting like a live feed of what was being posted from who you were following throughout the day. And then, they found different ways to tweak it so that it worked for them as a business, which you understand. It's a business overall.
No, I get that. It just kind of sucks because it's hard to see people's stuff. You know how I see people's stuff? Through stories. If you post your stuff in stories, that's how I see most people's things, is if they post it in their stories.
Me too. Like I at first I would see people doing those posts, like the story post. It's like, look, new post. And I'm like, well, I mean, you posted it, so like, I'll find it. But in this, like, the algorithm or whatever you want to call it has gotten so anti what we're looking for it's really, really bad. And that's why this kind of podcast became a thing. Is it was just Instagram Live. When I feel when they're not toying with the algorithm, I get breaks of good. Like I'll have like a week, like I think last week, live sessions. I do them at the same time every day, and they were like super busy. Lots of people. And the people that you can tell wanted to engage and stuff like that, even some new people. But then a few days ago, now it's ghosts. Yeah. And it's, sometimes it is timing or it's but it happens so often that you can tell that it's something that's tailored against you or against what you're trying to use it for.
Yeah, I try my best. And back to your question, because I didn't really answer it. I mostly am just like looking and seeing what people are up to. I feel like every time I look someone, if it's a tea company I follow or know, they have new teas or new projects, like you're doing this podcast. Like Tea Curious is recently coming out with those water drops. Like everyone's doing new stuff. So I'm trying to keep up with that. And then I think hopefully in the next year we'll have in-person tea events.
Yeah.
And it's always been difficult for me to go to those, but I'm hoping that I have more time to do that and maybe even like be a vendor if I can afford it. And then I can actually like meet people, because I've done markets locally here, but they're usually not tea focused.
Right. So you get interested people, and like people are like, see what you do, and they're like, oh, this is cool, but it stops at that.
Yeah, pretty much. Because like I mostly only do markets around the holidays. And so there's a few that I've done every year. Like there's a local brewery that doesn't charge a table fee, which is really nice. And you just go and it's a brewery. So like people there like beer. A lot of them like coffee. Some of them like tea. But I think this year I'm more positioned to have stuff that, people might like, even if they're not super into tea, which I think is beneficial. But it would be nice to go to a tea focused event. I know there's a few festivals next year that are already planned, and I'm going to try my best to go to them because I want to meet other tea people. I want to meet other tea companies. I want to meet tea friends. And I think that's the way I want to connect, hopefully next year.
Have you been to any of the festivals or anything, tea festivals?
Nope. Before? I planned in 2020 to go to the World Tea Fest, and then it got canceled, obviously. And then last year I was going to go, and I was excited that it was in Colorado instead of Las Vegas. And then they like changed it like a month before or something.
Yep.
And then they made it the same. They made it like combined with like the bartender thing. And I'm not against that, but I'm just like, can we have our own tea thing? Like, why does it have to be combined with like bartender stuff?
Dude,
like I love tea cocktails, but
I know I've been saying this, and I hope it's not offensive to those who run the expo and
yeah,
set it
I didn't
up.
mean any offense.
But I will say, and I'm okay with saying, on record, that I think it deserves a brainstorming session on what people want to see. How can we make this more? I'm not specifically talking about the expo now, but just some of the tea events. It is about the tea, but sometimes you can see when the like profits come in a little too much, which again, business has to happen, money has to be made. Yeah. But like when the focus, you see it like steered even just a little away from the essence of tea and more in the greedy option, it's like the expos have served their purpose in lots of different industries, and I think definitely in the tea industry. But from what I've heard from people that were like every year they go, they've been friends of mine who are sommeliers, and they agree that it just even though every year or two there'll be a really cool vendor or showcase that pops up, overall mostly the reason people were going was to meet people, to finally get to sit and just talk with, which I 100% get. But if it's going to be the World Tea Expo, I feel like you should be going to that expo because there is some crazy tea stuff to be seen. Or
I know what you mean. I've looked at the vendors in the past, and I mean, it's mostly tea companies, and then there's a few people who have like, you know, gadgets and stuff. I would love to go to that because I feel like I have a unique product line. Obviously, like we talked a lot about my boxes, but I don't sell that on a regular basis. So this would be my other stuff like socks, pins, whatever. I think that that's a unique thing that could go there, but there's also like a huge hurdle for me to pay, you know, like $1,200 to have a table there. It's like, I'm not going to make that money back.
Right. And that's like with businesses like me that are small focused, our profit margins are tiny.
So they are. And so it's hard to pay that much for a table. And I'm like, I'd love to go, but
there's some events that are kind of local that I could probably, you know, make an okay amount of money at. But the fee that I would have to pay to just have the booth and really no promise of what you're going to earn back, I couldn't make, even in that, how many hours the event is, I couldn't make enough money just to pay for the booth. So it's like, so it's really frustrating. Toronto's booth fee was, you know, not super expensive, but also not ultra affordable. But this past, the last year that it happened, my friend Amy Tautat and Phil World Tea House, we're all sitting there talking, and we're like, maybe next year we should just go like threesies, you know? And so they asked the organizers, and the organizers were like, yeah. They're like, you know, if you're okay with sharing X amount of space. It depends
the size. Yeah. Like if they only give you, you know, a 10 by 10 space or even smaller than that, it's kind of hard to share. But yeah, that's my biggest hurdle, honestly. I did the one that was online last year, and that was nice because like I did get to have some tea sessions with people. I actually met some people virtually because like you had Zoom sessions, and that was nice. It's a little bit more difficult to gauge, like, did I make my feedback? Because I don't necessarily know, like, if they came from there versus people buying my stuff. But that's why I don't do a lot of markets, because of the table fee. And it's the cost of doing business, but also if the table fee is, you know, $500, and say you make $500, you didn't really make anything, you know?
Yeah.
There's like this huge Christmas one in DC. There's a lot of them, but I'm close to DC. I'm in Maryland, and the table, and granted, it's like 3 days or something. The table's like $5,000 or something. And I'm just like, what business makes this much money back? I mean, I would love to do it because I love Christmas and like get to be outside, and they make it like a village. There's one in Maryland, there's one in DC, there's one in Baltimore. But yeah, that's why so that's my thing holding me back. There's one in, there's a tea fest, was it the Midwest Tea Festival?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I'm like debating, I do want to go like regardless, but I'm debating whether or not to do a table. I have to see. But
maybe if you haven't gone yet, it would just be really beneficial for you to just go your first year. Because like I just went to the Toronto Tea Festival just because I love tea and wanted to go to a tea festival, and Toronto is really close to me. But all of a sudden, years going there and getting feedback from the people there, they're like, no, we would actually really like to have you here. So it just took me a couple of years, like right off the bat. If you were like, hey, you want to try to go to be a vendor, I'd be like, no. Like, you know, like especially looking at a fee. But well, it's also hard too if you were doing TT, because then you got to have water. So if you need electricity, they'll usually they'll charge you for electricity as well. So it's really tough, especially if you're just doing sampling. up here in upstate, we have a lot of like backwoods music festivals. So like, if you know the right people, there are some nice opportunities that you can get into where like booth fees are extremely reasonable. And it's, you know, like we do one every year that's far into the woods, and it's just like a music festival. They have this ski area that they rent out. It's in the summer, and it's a huge group of friends that, you know a huge group of musicians that know a huge group of people that do creative things, and so they just put it all together. And it's not profit. Like the guy who's running it, he's not like I wanted to start a festival so that I can make a bunch of money. He was like, I want to do a festival because I want to do something where a bunch of people are going to have an awesome time. And so it makes you look at those prices, and it just makes you go, I mean, is stuff so wild right now to even like rent a venue that you'd have to, you know what I mean? Like, I guess I would love some, if those are going to be the high prices, maybe a little justification.
Yeah, I mean, I will say some of the holiday ones, especially, I don't know about others because I usually look at holiday ones. They'll say like, this is the amount of foot traffic we usually get. This is all the exposure you get leading up to the event. And that's always great, but it's also like, you never know, especially for someone like me, if I'm not going to something tea focused, it's always hard for me to guess whether my stuff will be popular or not. Because it's not that it's not for everyone, but you know what I mean? Like if I've had so many people come up to me like, oh, I don't like tea, and then walk away. That's
like bound to happen. But at the same time, like you said, if you're looking at a possible event you're looking at doing, and you can really tell that it's going to be a lot of people that truly don't get it at all, don't want to get it, they'll look at it and they'll do the typical things. Oh, this is cute. Okay, thanks, bye. And it's not like they need to, even if you don't like something, you should buy it. But it's like that as a vendor, like, even though they may not mean it offensively, it kind of hurts a little. Like, you know what I mean? It makes you feel like sort of foolish.
There's two. I've had, I think, very good experiences at markets. And the flip side of that is I've had people, whether they bought my stuff or not, come up to my table and be like, oh my God, this is so lovely. This is so nice. This is beautiful. And it's nice to hear people say that when they're like physically interacting with something that I've designed. And so that is really wonderful. And then there's also times where people will, I feel like it's usually other vendors who will like come up to my table and be like, what is this? What do you...
They always do that.
I remember one time
always do that.
I had this like local market, and I don't remember what he was selling, but it was like a guy and his wife, and they did some like a business together. I feel like it was jewelry or something. Like they made jewelry. And a lot of my stuff had like hand lettering, that's like kind of like calligraphy, kind of. It's a little more specialized than cursive, sometimes it's hard to read or whatever. And like the guy came up and started a conversation with me for like 10 minutes about how his son doesn't know how to read cursive and like he wouldn't be able to read this. I was just like, okay.
With vendors, there's like two types of fellow vendors. You either get someone who's like genuinely just, they see, especially you're a like business where you do something that's cool. So like sometimes like the vendor will come over, they'll look at their stuff, and even though they're not into tea or whatever, they'll be like, this is legitimately cool. They'll like talk, they'll pay you compliments that really show that they really are like, this is cool.
Yeah.
Glad you're here. And then there are the ones, like you said, they walk over and they just sort of like, mm-hmm. And then
it's
away.
a face. It's like, what is that?
It's very like here. It's like sometimes I feel like it's almost like the mob sending a message type deal. Like they're just kind of coming in, just being like, I see you're here. Like I've really have had that where they almost, you see them like kind of sizing you up, and it's like, I'm not trying to take your money, man. Like it's always a weird thing to me too. It's a big thing these days is that people see like if you make a sale, that's a sale that was taken from them or that was a potential. And that's such a wild thought. Like jealousy is really easy to happen. So I get that. But like past just an instant thought, like how does that continue to?
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is usually if I go to a market, for example, I'm not having stuff that other people have. So if someone makes a sale at a different booth and they're like, well, that person could have bought something for me, they might not have, or vice versa. I do understand, there's this whole thing like, the concept of community over competition, which I do really like that, rising tide lifts all boats, that kind of thing. I do appreciate that. But I also think that some people take that as like a free for all to just like have access to you and your ideas. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, I invented all of this stuff and I was first about everything. But there are some things that like I have been doing that other people haven't been doing. And if someone else started doing it, I wouldn't necessarily like take some action to be like, oh, you need to not do that. But I'd be like, damn, man, like they kind of copied me a little bit.
Yeah, it's like a point of pride. Like it's something that you did that you're genuinely proud of. And when you see somebody doing that, like you said, whether it's organic or non-organic, whether they're truly copying you or they just had a somewhat similar idea, it does burn. Like jealousy is a real thing.
I try to not let that kind of stuff bother me though, because like, what are you going to do if I'm not going to take legal action? Then there's no reason for me to like sit and stew about it.
I had a Canadian store started in the last year, and they're
with your same name.
Yeah,
I think I saw it on when I was Googling.
It just has one different letter. I think it's instead of the Y in uni, it's Unytea.
Yes,
and
I think I saw that.
A bunch of people contacted me about it and were like, oh, and I'm like, God, hold on. So I messaged them. They're Taiwanese. I love everyone from Taiwan. So I'm like, first of all, big fan of your country, big fan of what you guys make. I was
love your teas. Thank you so much.
So I was just letting them aware of like, I didn't know about this. People brought this to my attention and they're supporters of me. So they're on my side. They're fighting on my side, whether, I'm asking them to or not.
It's not malicious.
So I was just sort of saying like, hey, these people, you might get a little bit of flack. And just so you like, I've been doing this, like you said, I don't even know how many years, 5-6 years now. So it's like, and I do things in Canada, in your area of Canada, with
I was
going to
say, when it's a different country, it's kind of like out of your hands, But I guess if you do stuff in Canada.
Right. So it's like, I just said to them, I was like, the way I think I put it was if you're like still in like the really, like they only had like 2 Instagram images or something like that. So I was like, I just suggested, hey, if you really are still in the brainstorming phase and, now that there is a store that has a similar name, like, just maybe even just consider changing it. If you don't, then you don't. But I was just sort of saying like, here's this. I'm not mad about it, but just know that this could cause confusion in the future. And, they're very aware of it and we're adamant on keeping it the way it was. And I was like, all right, I mean, that's fine. And I'm not like, I've completely forgotten about it until we're talking now, but like, it happens. And like, again, at first I got those little like internal, like, oh, something of mine is being tampered with but like now, like after I've had like a long time, like, and I felt like I was proud of how I handled it because I didn't attack them. I wasn't accusational. I just was like, hey, how you doing? Here's this, do with it what you want.
Yeah. I haven't experienced that really yet. Knock on wood, bamboo.
it's not super. It's not super prevalent. It doesn't happen every day.
I mean, like for example, when I went to make a Twitter, someone had already used the name Tea Thoughts, and their Twitter was like they just posted random stuff, didn't really have anything to do with tea. Mm-hmm. And I was like, all right, whatever, I mean, I have a legal like doing business as type thing for my state with my name. It's kind of hard to trademark unless I have like thousands of dollars. Yeah. I am going to do that eventually, but
well, for what you do, especially when you're doing design and
yeah, it's like you have to do everything. I looked it up one time because I was like, I would be devastated if someone like took my name, like my full name, but
I think they would take your business, like they would take your business model more than they would take your name.
Yeah, I think so too. And the thing is like something that I have experienced is, like if I have friends who have small businesses that don't do tea stuff. I have a lot of like friends who do pins and other types of things. And sometimes we share like a printer or a manufacturer or whatever, and I don't feel like it's competition because they're doing something different than me. But if you're like, I want to start a tea themed shop, tell me how to do it. And I have had people message me that, and it's usually someone I like don't even talk to. And I'm like, you can use the good old Google machine, just like I did. And that's not a me, like, I don't want to help you. That's like, come on now. Like,
just sometimes you just don't especially I would assume a lot of those people, a lot of them don't even realize how, they're not stupid, but sometimes it's a semi-stupid question.
Well, I think it's like
basically they're contacting you being like, so, hey, how do I do exactly what you're doing?
Or even if it's not exactly what I'm doing, it's like, can you give me tips on like how to start a business? And I'm like,
I give like light advice.
Do you want to pay me to consult you? I'm like, like someone says like, I want to start a shop. I'm like, well, I suggest you could start here or there, but I don't have time to like do business consulting unless that's something you want to pay me for. But I think also the difference is that the nice thing about small business, like you or I or other people in our similar situation, is that we're more accessible. So like if someone has questions about your tea, they can ask you and you're probably going to answer it, right? The downside of that is people think that they like have access to you whenever they want for whatever they want. I don't get a lot of that. Like I think I'm very lucky because I know some horror stories. Yeah. But I think that's what it is. It's like, okay, she's very approachable, so I'm just going to ask her whatever. And I think I don't want to like bring it up too much because I still get like shivers from it. But I think you remember like that woman was like saying that I copied her cookie cutter thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, no. I did not. And it's not even the same thing. I didn't even get to see the post. Apparently people came to my to say that it was kind of like not, it was kind of BS.
To your defense. Yeah, they're coming to your defense.
To my defense. And I was just like, that's probably the closest I've ever had. And also it like was not even a real thing because it was not a thing at all. But like that's probably the closest, and I got those like, what did you say? You got butterflies, or like you felt a little. I was like,
yeah, it happens, but like as long as like you're a pretty even-headed person and you're able to at some point step back and look at it from another perspective, that usually helps solve most of those problems. Like you might still have some frustrations from it, but
yeah. But the thing is, I want to be like open and nice and giving, but
I'm sure you want to inspire people too. I'm sure that like if somebody like really did start their like not just like you, they're not copying you, but say they they just started doing stationery. They were like, oh, I just want to just make just stationery that's kind of tea and Asian themed and stuff. And they're like, I want you to know you just really inspired me, and I really just appreciate you helping spark this thing in me. Like, that's a lot different from just starting up the same thing and
Yeah. And I mean, I don't own the space, obviously.
Yeah.
I do think that I am one of the first people who was doing it, at least that I can tell.
And
But
especially as someone who's doing it, like, that's what you do. Like, it's not like it's just a one or two off thing.
And it's definitely different if someone does something with the same theme versus someone taking like one of my designs and like copying it.
Stylistically, that's what I was kind of trying to say at the beginning, is stylistically you have a very you style. Like, it's when you see a new thing from you, you can tell it's your work, which, like,
that's a huge compliment, so thank you.
No, for real though, like, if you look at, like, it's sometimes if I'm scrolling through and I see like a nice tea object that's got a graphic design on it, I can tell if it's yours or not. Like, it's very, in a good way.
Well, I appreciate that. But that's true. It's a different than, like, if someone was to start and making cards or whatever else. Like, there's other people who make cards, for example, that have tea stuff on them. I don't own that. But the difference is it's definitely style and specific designs. And I haven't, thankfully experienced anything like that, but it's something you think about. I think that some people are afraid to do something, and then when they see someone else do it and they're like, oh, that person's just a normal person, and look, they did it, I'm going to do it too. And that's great. I do like that. But also, you got to think of it from, like, I am a business in the end of the day. I would like to be able to support myself and pay my bills and stuff like that. So you have to also think of it from that perspective. So it's not just, I love tea and all this stuff. It's like, if it is actually business, then I have to treat it that way and protect my intellectual property. But I think one of the biggest advantages of tea thoughts, and something I didn't think of, is so many people have messaged me and said that they've tried different teas, or they were encouraged to go try different teas because of either something in my shop or something I post on social media. And that is, like, so awesome. That is probably one of the most rewarding things, is that I'm encouraging people to just try something new. Again, I'm not going to say drink tea only this way, because drink tea however you want. But if it's like something that you didn't think of, or you were afraid to try, and I made it more welcoming, or made it look like it's something you can try, and then you did it and you enjoyed it, that's freaking awesome.
I got, like you said, and you're not wrong, and I got some phenomenal new customers and friends from our collaboration. I mean, and not only like, I got a couple sales, like, that's great, but like a couple of the customers are like super solid people that have become, like, I talk to on a very regular basis now, that I know have made posts thanking you for including the Benefuki release and stuff like that, and getting to. So I mean, you're accomplishing your goal, so that's got to feel pretty good.
I'm not gonna lie, that's a pretty awesome part of it, especially like when I tried something so unique like the Benefuki, and I was like, I can buy this and share it with my customers, and that's what I try to do. I like a lot of the stuff on Instagram. I'm like, people post about companies, or I search for companies that I've never tried myself. I've also started to try, I do like these small business highlights on my blog, and I do that not like I'll get free product and then write about them. I try to find something that I'm actually interested in trying, and I purchase it, and then like I write a little bit about the company if they're willing to answer some questions. So it's just small stuff like that. It's not just about like I'm it's like cool to make connections. You know, that's one of the big things about going to a tea festival is I would get to meet fellow tea drinkers, and I'd also get to meet fellow people in tea. So like I'm not selling tea, you know, necessarily, but I'd get to meet other tea vendors and see what they're doing, and that would be so awesome.
And you
I
have
think.
no idea how quickly you get to know tea people, because like you probably talk with them a bit online, so you have a bit of context for like your relationship of being two people that know each other exists.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I now have like consider good friends. I mean, Kevin from Camellia Sinensis, again, Amy Tautat, Phil World Tea House, Sucha, it's at Hoji Chaco, like Chai. I could go on and on and on and on and on, and it's those friendships. Like it's so much realer when you can just get in person and actually share the space with someone. Like there's the feeling is unbelievable, and the thing I've noticed more than anything is that no one has been fake. Like every person I've met has been exactly like Marco meeting Marco. Like
It was
Marco
so
is
awesome to
exactly
meet
Marco.
Marco.
He
I
is
went to Chicago and I met him. Yeah, I know what you mean. He's Marco.
it's there's no there isn't any like Showtime face or presentation voice. Like there's none of it. It's just complete, just genuine him. I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky I've been able to meet up with him twice now. But he's just a person again who started as just a person who was also curious in tea and really getting farther and farther into it, and he's a very good friend of mine, like very very good friend of mine. Most of my friends now, like real truly people that I consider very close to me, I've met through the tea community and even just through tea.
Yeah, I'm always like, yeah, my friend. And then someone's like, who are they? And I'm like, oh, it's my Instagram friend. I've never met them in person, but I know what you mean. I actually, one of my friends, I don't know if you know them on Instagram, they're Fin Pin Shop. They do like ocean themed stuff.
Sounds familiar.
I met her from like a pin group that I was in, and we would like talk about pins and stuff. And we became so close. Like I've never met her in person, and like she invited me to her wedding. And granted, like she's also like part Persian, so I feel like that kind of gave us a cultural connection. But still, it's like I know exactly what you mean for sure. And I have been lucky to meet some tea people. Like I met Marco it was very short, but I met him when I was in Chicago. And you know, Jen of, what is she now? Barefoot Tea Lady? Yeah,
Hmm.
she lives near me. So we've had tea before, several times. There's a few people in the DC area, and I think we'll probably have like a tea meetup or whatever. But a lot of the people I hope to meet at a festival. Do you plan on going to any festivals next year?
Yeah, it's tough. I've been in contact with the Toronto, and I think they're going to pass on this. They usually do theirs in February.
Yeah.
I think that they are, rather than try to like slap one together, I think they're just going to take their time on 2022 for that. In terms of what I would like to do, I would really like to make it to Chicago if it's happening.
That's usually in the fall, right?
I
Is it?
think so. It probably wouldn't be until next fall, but I don't know of many that are on the books scheduled.
Well, the ones that I've heard about, the Midwest one, which is sometime in the spring, I think. There's the World Tea Expo, I think is happening also in the spring.
In
In like,
Vegas again.
yeah. Um, And then the one that I think people aren't sure about, but I do keep hearing about, is Seattle. And they're not, I don't know if they're sure if it's happening, but if that one happens, I would love to go to that. I've never been to Seattle, first of all.
So Seattle, Portland, they're looking kind of rough right now.
Okay.
I know from many people that live there, it's interesting being in that area right now because of the homelessness and all that jazz. But that aside, I forgot all about the PDX, the Portland Tea Festival.
Have you been to that one?
No, but that was on my like most wanted list because
it sounds like it's possible it might happen this year, maybe.
Each year it gets bigger, and it's all people like me that they'll have like a table and a big tea, and then they'll just have room for just cups, and you can just come and sit down, and you just dole out tea. Like, oh, I just love doing that. I absolutely love.
Well, hopefully that one happens.
Yeah,
I don't think it's decided yet because I think it's usually in the fall, so it's like they have like an entire year almost. But that's one that I would love to go to. And if Chicago happens again, I visit Chicago in the summer and I had a lot of fun. So I'd love to go back to Chicago. I have some family that lives there too, so I would go to that one. I did, the Toronto one. If they were having it, I had asked about maybe sending like swag or something. Some item to donate, so at least like my presence was there, because
if you ever
that's
need,
the biggest thing is I'm just trying to get my stuff out there.
If you ever need, like, I'm pretty good with a lot of the organizers of the Toronto one, and I know they like to do that stuff, obviously, like have sponsors and have people that are donating stuff that's
to like their goodie bags, or like they give like swag bags or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a little bit hard because it's like giving away free stuff. But if you find that if I find something that's doable, then
right, you find something that you can get made at a good cost that you can write off. You feel okay writing off as like for promotional use, because I mean the way I think about it sometimes is like, look at what it costs to just like rent like a tiny square in your local like newspaper. Like the one near around us, the last time I talked to those jokers, they told me that for one issue that goes out weekly, so I just 1 week, and this is a magazine, people that was widely dispersed, but people would open it up, flip through it, and throw it in the like. They wouldn't pay too much attention to it. So it's not super popular. For a tiny, tiny, tiny little square, it was like $400. And this woman's on the phone like trying to tell me that this is a good deal. And I just stopped. I went, ma'am. I was like, I don't mean to be rude, but just let me like break this down for you. With $400, I could fund myself to travel to a different state, shack up at a coffee house or a cafe, and sell bags of my tea at a personal demonstration, and I could make I could use less than that $400, and I could make back.
Well, then there you go. That means that's what you should be doing, not the newspaper ad.
And I tried to be like, because she was really like trying to be like convince me that this was a great idea, and she was like trying to like, she was using her mastermind skills of tricking me, and I'm sitting there fully aware of what she's doing.
If she's a salesperson, that's what you gotta do. She's just doing her job.
Right. And so that's why I was like, but she was like so curious about why I wasn't interested, so that's why I was like, if you really want to hear it, I was like, I'll explain to you what I would do with that money instead. And she just, at the end just was, okay, well, let me just leave you my contact. And it's like, okay. It's like, but that at least for my business sake, the way that I do things, like it would just never be practical. Like,
yeah. And I mean, that goes back to the same thing. I hope the people listening to this podcast episode are super into business, since that's what we've been talking about the whole time. But the little area I live in is called Tacoma Park, and I happened to just get in touch with their like business association, They're like, hey, we have a spot at a market and it's like $100 for a table, which is not very much. And I was like, yeah,
No.
I'll do that. But for example, say I only had pins with me, right? I'd have to sell a lot of those pins just to make a profit, right? Versus I know there's this one vendor I see all the time and they sell these like Turkish towels or something. And each one is like a big, it's a big towel and they're very soft and whatever. And each one's like,
Hmm.
$50. They sell a couple of those and, they've made back plus. So it really depends. And I feel like for tea, I have seen some tea that's like very pricey based on whatever it is, or, I don't question people's profit margins. You got to do what you got to do. But I can imagine for selling bags of tea, you also need to sell a lot of them to make your profit back. So I think it's better even if you do like more intimate. I know it's probably hard with some COVID stuff, like depending on what the mandates are of the place, but doing something intimate where you get to talk to someone face to face, they're coming into some place wanting tea, that's an important one too. And so I feel like that's way better than a newspaper. That's kind of, I feel like that's kind of in the past, or that's better suited for like services
I
versus,
I feel so bad because, like you said, that is an industry. That's an
yeah.
industry that people put their heart and soul into. But very unfortunately, it's in this current day, it's really not practical for a lot of different businesses.
I
So
think
it's
it's better for like services. Someone's like, oh, where can I look up insurance or something else? Like maybe they don't want to look up online, they want to look for something local. But in terms of products, like I know where I live, at least, especially in DC, there's like a huge like art scene in DC, and there's all these markets and um, studio spaces. There's a lot of artist collectives that you can apply to have your stuff in that space. And I think that's way better for smaller businesses. And you're getting people who like are specifically searching that out. They want that specialty thing, or they want the small business thing, as opposed to going to like Target or Amazon, or which a lot I shop there too, but a lot of times I'm like,
yeah,
especially
shouldn't
when
be
I
the
need
only
something
place.
last minute, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta like get these shipping boxes from Amazon because I ran out or whatever. But a lot of times I'm like, oh, Saturday they have the like arts walk market. I'm gonna go there and it's like illustrators and people make ceramics and soap, and I'm like, I can just Christmas shop. And that's the type of place where like I think my stuff is good and tea is good, especially since people are still kind of like warming up to tea. I
Yeah,
feel like in the US, like it's getting more, but especially the type of tea you have, I feel like flavored blends are really starting to hit it off, but it's harder to like convince someone. And I always say I don't drink blended tea, but the thing is I do. Like I don't mind tea,
yeah,
like especially like black teas. I really love black teas with like rose in it or whatever. My problem is a lot of the teas have like flavoring added, and I'm really sensitive to it, so I don't often like that.
yep.
But a good tea, like a
Naturally
lot
flavored.
naturally flavored with like, or some kind of like flour in it or something. I do
That's
enjoy blended stuff like that.
yep.
I'm very sensitive to some of the like flavoring, like the smell and the taste of it is so, but that's what's getting bigger. But I think that's a gateway into trying other stuff too and seeing like what else is out there. So I think it's good in general. Just,
People are getting over the years. I've noticed people are getting much more comfortable with the idea of high end tea. And there's that can cover a loose amount of stuff, but
Mhm.
people are getting more used to the idea, and people like me and you, when we're talking with people about these things, we have better language to sort of talk about it, and like, oh well, it's kind of like wine tasting, or it's kind of like, and then we're
Or
helping kind
even
of,
coffee. I mean,
yeah,
coffee is like very special. I don't know as much because I don't really drink it, but like from when I see, it's just as specialized as tea about like where it's grown and the climate and, you know.
People just feel like they get so, the thing they get caught up on is like, first of all, they see it and they're like, but I don't have all these things. I don't, and it's like, well, but you don't need to. You can
just have
literally
a cup.
Just,
honestly.
but then like my problem will be if I do like markets that aren't tea oriented is like, so I'll be selling tea and they'll go, ooh, okay, all right, I want some of this. Now, how do I make this at home? And you go like, okay, well, so do you have just like a mesh strainer? And they're like, no. And you're like,
you
no,
need to start selling mesh
you.
Strainers.
I know. I really do just need to find like just a very basic and just buy a ton. I really should, because like that's my thing is that if you, for me, this is all worth it. Like this, I like all of these pieces because they make the drinking experience much better for me. If your preferred way is just with a mug, that's cool. Like if you don't have all this stuff, but you are interested in drinking higher quality tea, yeah, it should be easier. But like, so okay, yes, I should get baskets, but because up and right now I don't have them, it's really hard when people are like, oh, I don't have anything to make it with, and like, yes, you could be like, well, just go to like, you know, go to Wegmans or go to like Walmart. I'm sure they have like a little mesh basket, but like. Sometimes if you start to say stuff like that, people then are like, oh, okay,
oh, it's too much.
This is, and it's like, but it's so hard because it's like, no, it's not though. Like it isn't, you know what I mean? I get you're overwhelmed, but like you have to be really sensitive towards different people's experience level with tea.
It's also hard because I grew up in a house drinking tea, and while we didn't use like gaiwan or smaller teapots, we used the more like bigger teapots, we used samovar. I was always used to like having a strainer, having a mug that has a strainer in it, having teapots, having, you know what I'm saying? So I'm always like, well, why don't you have that? I never say that out loud. I'm like, you don't have a strainer in your house? But the thing is you're right. You know, when I do stuff like my boxes, most of the tea in them is like sometimes blended in the fact that like it has two types of, like I had like a tea from White to Tea that was like white and black tea ball pressed together. So blended, there is some of that, but usually I don't do flavored tea, and that's mostly because not because I'm like, oh, don't drink that. It's like because that's way more accessible. People can find it like anywhere they go usually. And so I'm trying to expose people to a different type of tea. And I'm not like, only brew your tea with a gaiwan, but I'm like, I have some if you would like to try this way of brewing. I personally like it, you know, because I love sniffing my tea and it's kind of like a nice thing. I make tea in the morning with like a basic teapot and strainer. That's my morning tea. I make like the way I drink. I drink it when I was a kid. But in the afternoon, I like to sit and have my all my stuff out, and it's like a nice thing for me. But when I first discovered it, I feel like I was more becoming like a tea purist, like, oh, I have to now drink all tea this way. And then I was like, meh, I'll just drink however I want. And other people should too, you know. Like when I was growing up, my dad was like tea bags are the worst. It's like, it's the dust of the tea. You shouldn't drink that. Because like we never drink tea bags. We drink like loose leaf tea in the pot. And the pot has holes. So it's a strainer already. And so I thought that for the longest time. But, you know, if someone wants to drink tea bags, like, what do I care?
Yeah,
I might say like, I hope maybe you could try something else just to see a difference in taste, because I think there is a difference. Like tea bags, I think, are usually much stronger, have more tannins, especially if it's like a black tea. But when I have had people try your teas or other teas that are like imported from different places and are different flavor profiles, they're like, I didn't know tea tasted like this. And I'm like, yes, exactly. you know?
Yeah, you just try to like show people that like there's like, it's not that you shouldn't drink blended teas and that you need to drink. It's just that here's, if you haven't experienced this, try it. There's
exactly.
there's some days when I go to the tea cafe that's here in Syracuse, and I want to get an iced tea, and they do have some straight teas, but someday I want a artificially peach flavored oolong. Like, that's just, some days that's just what I want. And I'm not going to like chastise myself for wanting that. But like I said, I will tell people that this is the way that I prefer my tea. But like,
I'm flexible.
Right. So we are out of time. We have hit over our hour limit. I know.
We talked too much.
Well, no, just we were going. I try not to like cut it off, and we were on such a good mark, and then it was just like you kept being like, I can't, I don't want to cut it. So obviously, I'll include your links for your store and all that. Do you have any special promotions you have coming up that you want to shout out to, or just?
Well, when is it going to be, I guess, published?
This will be this week's.
Oh, okay. Well, I do have on the 19th of November, which is like not this Friday, the Friday after. I do have a shop update, so I'll have some new stuff in the shop, and you can check out my Instagram, which is at Tea Thoughts, for previews of some of the stuff that will be in there. Got some new earrings. Since my countdown box sold out so quickly, which I was like, amazed, but also like, damn it, so many people like missed out. I'm doing like a smaller, like 6-day one, kind of like loosey goosey. You can start it whenever you want, and I'll have a limited amount of those, just trying to like fill in the space for people who missed out. So that will be on the 19th if people are interested in that.
Awesome. Well, thank you a ton. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you as always, but it was nice to kind of get you on this nice format, and hopefully, like you helped me out by introducing me to some new customers. Hopefully this podcast can kind of send some people your way that weren't aware.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and maybe we'll see each other at a tea festival in 2022.
I think it's a little more than possible. So cheers to you. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
And we'll be in touch.
All right.